Biographical. This is Anita Peters interviewing Louise T. Shunatona of Wewoka, Oklahoma on November the 18th, 1971. We're here at the First Baptist Church of Wewoka, Oklahoma. I think I'll just start off by asking you to give some of your personal background of where you were born and when, and something about your parents, just family background.
I was born May 5th, 1905 at Wewoka, Indian Territory. My parents, Reverend Johnson E. Tiger, Lena Benson Tiger, both Creek Indians. I grew up in Wewoka, finished high school there in 1923. 1923 in the fall, I went to Stevens College in Columbia, Missouri. I earned an AA, or Associate Arts degree. I went from there to SMU one semester and came back to Oklahoma University in the second or spring term of 26 and finished with a BS degree in home ec or home economics in 1927. I taught school 1 year in Okmulgee County and at Cromwell, Oklahoma for 3 years. I married Baptiste B. Shaunatona, and we came to Wewoka to live. We have 2 sons, Baptiste Jr. and Richard Edward. After they were 8 and 10 years old, I returned to teaching, and I've taught in Wewoka schools for 26 years, including some of my other teaching. I have in all taught 31 years in Oklahoma.
You said that you were originally from Wetumpka then. Why don't you tell me what the town was like at that time and what Wewoka was like when you first moved here, the people and just the general physical differences from today.
At Wetumpka, the land originally was my mother's allotment. When the Frisco Railroad came, they wanted the right-of-way through her land, and the government took her land, gave her some acreage near Calvin, Oklahoma, and promised to pay her a large sum of money for the town site of Wetumpka, which they never did do. Now, when I first came to Wewoka, I was in the 7th grade. Several friends and I visited back and forth. I'd gotten acquainted with them at football games, and for many, many years, I have enjoyed their friendship. When I first came here to visit them, there were only a few stores, 1 hotel, and 1 bank, which ended on 1st Street. When I came back in 1931, Wewoka had grown quite a bit. It was almost 10,000 at one time, but due to the Depression and the loss of oil, many people left. Wewoka now is only 6,000 in population. We are very proud, though, of our school system, our churches, and our civic organizations here. In 1933, a number of the college women in Wewoka organized the American Association of University Women. I was given the honor of being the first president. It has been in existence here these many years. We have sponsored scholarships for worthy high school seniors. We had 16 members in 1933. Today, we boast of 65 members. I think that shows Wewoka's educational and cultural background, that we are an educated group of citizens in Wewoka.
That's really very interesting. What differences do you think you see between the University of Oklahoma as when you attended it? What was it like then, or who were some of the outstanding people, and what were some of the activities you enjoyed? What differences do you think there are between then and now in the university?
In 1927, we thought we were a large university, but we had only the one campus. Today, they have the extension of the large, newer campus. Buildings are beautiful there, but there's an entirely different group on the newer campus than at the older campus. Most of the freshmen and sophomores or undergraduates attend in the old campus. In the newer campus, you find the graduate students. You find an entirely different group of boys and girls, or men and women, as a result. I've always been very proud of Oklahoma University, or University of Oklahoma. My husband graduated there at the same time I did with a law degree. Ripley, and believe it or not, said he was the first full-blood American Indian to graduate from the University of Oklahoma Law School. We knew the professors, Dr. Brazil, a wonderful president there. We all knew one another. Now that the university has grown so large, a lot of the boys and girls do not know one another as I think they should. I have seen in the past many of my wonderful professors leave this world for the happy hunting ground.
What about teaching school? The people you taught in all your years of teaching, have they changed, or are they basically always the same sort of students? Do you think that young people now are more obnoxious, or...
Yes, through a period of years I have noticed a great change. Today we have more of a discipline problem in our schools than we ever have. I don't say that that is due to careless rearing by parents, but I do feel like that there are very many parents who both work, and boys and girls are left a lot to their own recreation until the parents return from their duties. I feel like if there was a little more parental supervision at home, that boys and girls would be more apt to accept discipline. I have found, too, in the later years, when a boy or a girl has been called in for some discipline reason, the boy or girl must contact the parents before they will talk. When many of the parents come up, they are very protective of the boys and girls, and I feel that that is a great difficulty in helping us to manage discipline. We are very thrilled when we have a parent or parents who come up and cooperate with us, because then their children are cooperative.
You've seen quite a few changes happen in just the general school system, haven't you? What was the school like itself in physical characteristics when you first started your teaching here?
We had 2 grade schools, one high school, and one junior high. At junior high school, there was only the 7th and 8th grade. We have enlarged that building, and now we have the 9th grade there. And the addition of course, the 9th grade subjects such as home economics and English, algebra, science. Also, they have made quite an addition to the physical plant at the high school. Now, for several years, I have enjoyed a large cafeteria, a beautiful gymnasium, a shop built all to itself, and the redecorating of the high school. Is that?
You've been involved in some other activities.
Did I say backtrack? Backtrack on some of my family history. My father told me the story about my grandfather and how he earned his name. In those days, Indian boys were given their first name, and they were supposed to earn their second name. That is one reason why so many families do not have the same family name in earlier times, due to the fact that many of them use the paternal line of ancestry. When my grandfather, Modi, now Tiger, was in the Confederate Army under Colonel D.H. Cooper, the regiment was traveling and came to a swollen stream in the spring. As you know, very few bridges were built then. They asked for a volunteer to go across and see how safe it was to cross and to get some valuable information from the enemy. My grandfather volunteered. He swam across and got the material, returned, and as there are many Indians in the regiment, they named him Homa Tagi, meaning brave, first to cross. For many years he went by Modi Homatagi. When the Doss Commission came in 1907 and enrolled the Creeks as well as many others, they thought my grandfather said Tiger, and he was always called and enrolled on the Creek roll as Modi Tiger. He later was the first appointed Creek chief of the Creek Nation in 1907. Up to that time, the tribes elected their own chiefs, but a new ruling by Washington, the chiefs were appointed. Now, again this year, they're returning this to the Creek tribe and all the other 5 civilized tribes, and for the election of their own chief. My grandfather served from 1907 until his death in 1920. He lived in a spacious home near Sharp, Oklahoma. My father, Johnson Tyron, was born at Slopslocko Indian community, 8 miles north and west of Wetumpka. Soon afterwards, he moved to Okmulgee, or Sharp, where my grandfather had his lovely home after he built it. My father's mother was Hetty Kennard. Her father was Peter Miko, and her grandfather was Yaha Tustanagi, both well-known Creek leaders. When my father was 9 years old, his mother died. He had never gone to school until soon afterwards. My grandfather married Kizzy Lewis. She had come to Sharp to teach school. My father was, of course, to go to school to her. The English language was very difficult for him, but he mastered it in good style. When he was 20 years old, he was given a Bachelor of Science degree from what is called Indian Baptist University then, but Bacone College now. He left there and went to Wetumpka boarding school to teach school where my mother was teaching school. And in 1900, they married and went back to Okmulgee to the Creek Orphans Home, where my father was superintendent and my mother was matron. They left there in 1904 and moved back to Wetumpka and built a nice home. And then again later moved to Okmulgee again. My father became a minister. He used to be known as one of the Indian circuit riders, riding a pony to his pastorates. He later had several churches under his ministry, and then several years later he was made presiding elder. Today they call him district superintendent. At the time of his death in 1930, he was presiding elder. My father talked English and Creek very fluently, wrote it and read it. He also had a good understanding of Latin, German, and French. He considered it quite an honor to come to courts in Wewoka during the early oil boom in 1923 and interpret in courts to help decide the rightful owner of the lands, since they were had clouded titles. He thought that was a lot of fun to be paid to talk his own language. I'm very proud of my mother and father and grandfather. I think they have contributed quite a bit to the religious life and high morals of our Indian people.
That was excellent. You really have a fascinating family background. What about your involvement with the Methodists? Do you attend that church?
Yes.
All right, I believe you have a story concerning that too, don't you? And then we'll...
May 29, 1951, a group of 37 boys and girls who belonged to the Methodist Youth Fellowship went on a day's outing to Turner Falls. I was asked to be a substitute chaperone because Mrs. Russell could not go. We left at 5 o'clock that morning, all in a gay mood. When we reached Turner Falls, Mr. and Mrs. Swartz and Mr. and Mrs. Ralston were icing down the cokes and cold drinks and getting lunch ready. I said, I'm going with the boys and girls to the falls. I'd been there before, and I knew how careless boys and girls are to want to climb the front of the falls. I had asked them all not to do it. I hadn't been down there 10 minutes until I saw 2 or 3 boys climbing the front of the falls. I realized it wasn't any of our boys, so I didn't say anything. But when I saw one fall, I blew my whistle. 2 of our boys came to me, Don O'Donnell and Bob Bishop. I told them that boy had not come back up. They disagreed, but followed my wishes and went down to look for him. They came back up and had nobody. I said, please, please go back. That boy is still there. Bob Bishop went alone. Pretty soon, he came back and brought this boy's limp body. We immediately emptied him of what little water he had. I looked around and saw Carolyn Russell standing there, and I knew she had finished the 8th grade and had had a special course in artificial respiration. I asked her to give the boy artificial respiration, and I held the pressure points and also tried to keep a lot of the loss of blood from a huge gash in his scalp. Time to time, I had to fish for his tongue as he tried to swallow it. Each time Carolyn bent over to administer to this boy, she was crying because he would groan, so she felt like she was hurting. I found that his temperature had returned to normal, his breathing was all right, but I could not get him to return to consciousness. I kept asking if anybody knew this boy. No one did. Finally, a boy came running up and says, you got him. You saved him. I said, what's his name? His name is Raphael. I called him and I couldn't get him. I said, where have you been? I have gone for help. About that time, an ambulance came from Wynnewood and took the boy away. After that, the boys and girls were too upset to go swimming anymore. And we returned to camp, talked a while, and decided to eat, those who did not feel too ill to do so. Some of us ate and went down to Blue Hole to swim. A couple of the boys and girls wanted to walk back to the soft drink stand. They came running back in a few minutes and said, Mrs. Shaunatona, they say that the boy died at the hospital. I said, he couldn't have, unless he died of shock, because he had normal breathing and his pulse was normal. After that, everybody wanted to go home. I asked Mr. Swartz, who was driving our huge truck, to let's go by Wynnewood and see what we could find out about the boy. We did. Mr. Swartz stopped at the garage, and he called the hospital, and the boy was just fine, and he was sitting up talking to his father. So we were all happy and started home, and everybody sang all the way home. The next morning, I received several calls before I had read the morning paper. In the Daily Oklahoman, a boy named Walker from Oklahoma City was given all the credit for saving this boy. The boys and girls immediately wanted to go on our little KWS8 station and give our side of the story. My younger son, Richard, was a student forecaster there once a week at the station. And he took Carolyn Russell and Bob Bishop to the station and interviewed them. Our Wewoka paper was kind enough to print the story according to what really happened. We found out in the paper, the Daily Oklahoma, that morning, that Raphael was Raphael Castro, Jr., the son of the Mexican consul who was at that time stationed in Oklahoma City. He was very, very happy and pleased and acknowledged boys and girls' bravery. I did not go to the radio station because I did not want to claim any of the honor. It was enough for me to know that I had been a part of saving this young man's life, regardless of whose son he was. It was quite a traumatic experience for all of us.
That was a beautiful story. One moment, and I'll turn over the tape, and the interview will be continued on track 2. This is Anita Peters interviewing Mrs. Shunatona. This is part 2, continued from track 1, on November the 18th, 1971. Mrs. Shunatona, I believe that you were involved with the American Association of University Women, and that you had something to do with the publication of Barking Waters. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Preceding this, I said once that I had helped organize American Association of University Women in 1933. Again, in 1959, I was the president again, and we were busy with the project of publishing the Barking Water, which is a history and story of Wewoka. The Rotary Club of Wewoka had started out to sponsor this, but did not finish it. Mrs. Lucy Sitton, the high school English teacher and journalism teacher, who had been in Wewoka all her life, was very interested in keeping this history. She had her journalism class to interview many of the pioneer people in Wewoka and write up the stories of the part they played in the building of Wewoka and the contributions that various ones have made, which has made a wonderful story of Wewoka. We used this as a project in AEUW to make money and to preserve a well-known history of Wewoka, since AEUW is interested in all cultural and historical things that would be of benefit to people in the future. After much delay, we were able to send it to press in 1959. 1960, we received it and have sold over 1,000 copies. It is out of print. Now many people wish they had bought one. I think this is a great book, and so many people have enjoyed reading it.
while ago we were talking, and you told me something else about your days at OU, that you were members of some societies and sororities. Would you like to tell me about those?
I enjoyed the girls of Alpha Chi Omega National Sorority over there. Many of the girls who were in that group were also former students of Stevens College, where I had gone to school, and it made me feel so much at home when I first went to the OU campus. I was also pleased to say that I became a member of Kappa Delta Pi, an honorary educational society. You must maintain a 3.5 average in order to be a member.
All right, and then I believe you said something else that you had almost left out, was that you were a member of the Tribal Council of the Creek Indian Nation. I believe that was about 62. If you'd like to tell me something about that sounds pretty interesting.
All of the 5 civilized tribes have their own councils. The different tribes make up their own method of choosing the council. Some are chosen, like the Seminoles, they're chosen by elected ballots, and the
That sounds pretty interesting.
all of the 5 civilized tribes have their own councils. The different tribes make up their own method of choosing the council. Some are chosen, like the Seminoles, they're chosen by elected ballots. And the Creek Nation, this past wonderful Chief W.E., finally known as Dode McIntosh, I beg your pardon, was our chief for over 10 years. I had the privilege of serving in that council during his chieftainship. This past September we had another election, and it is my understanding that the council will no longer exist, but he will have a board of directors. I'm not sure about that as yet, but that's what I'm told. We did a lot of good. We helped our Indian people, and it was sincerely an honor for me to be chosen to be a member of the Creek Council these past several years. I've often laughed and said, my grandfather Modi Tiger, who was chief at one time, as I've said before, that I have said many times he would turn over in his grave if he knew that the Creek Council were allowing women to be on the council.
Thank you so much. Was there anything else that you had that you liked? Well, it's been a wonderful interview, and thank you so much for your time.